The scene was bleak, with houses in ruins and devastation. Woven through that was the muffled sound of a loudspeaker announcement, which came from the armed forces conducting training, requesting everyone to evacuate the danger zone. But that was just fake news created by the gang of thugs to facilitate their operations. Guns and ammunition were also meticulously prepared. That man began to load the sniper rifle. The first bullet silently grazed past a beautiful face. The girl's face was as cold as ice, not needing to feign surprise. The bullet flew straight in, shattering the family photo, which fell to the ground and left her utterly terrified. She mustered her courage to reach for her self-defense weapon, but was shot in the face by the distant assassin, revealing that the hunter was lurking nearby. In a moment of trembling fear, with a weight of 1,000 pounds hanging by a thread, she recalled the words her uncle had taught her. In this critical moment, she must stay truly focused. She remembered the conversation with her uncle, marked by a chilling and detached tone. With a sharp, angular face and two strikingly handsome features, Jin-man began to share his experience so that the girl at home could survive a shooting. It was about finding the opponent's blind spot, igniting a sudden spark of insight in her mind. Jian cleverly used the shards of broken glass attached to a broom to locate the enemy. Whether exposed at low or mid-range, they were immediately targeted and destroyed by the bullets. The assassin observed from a distance, trying to assess the situation, but became distracted by speculating what the girl might be plotting. Yet the skilled marksman missed his target at such a high range. In that moment, Jian confidently realized that the crosshairs aimed from afar and above were the safest place to be. Having thought it through, she immediately executed her plan. She climbed onto the refrigerator, readying herself with a determined gaze. The other two people, trapped there, were filled with confusion and fear at the scene unfolding before them. The girl focused intently and then launched herself forward. Before he could adjust his aim, she skillfully dodged the bullet that whizzed past her by a few millimeters. She then seized the opportunity to approach the gun lying quietly under the couch. The assassin, outsmarted by a kid, felt a deep sense of humiliation wash over him. However, this intense sequence was just the beginning. To understand it better, we need to go back a few days. At that time, John was taken to the precinct for tea after being accused of assaulting someone. When the police reviewed the security footage, they discovered that the incident stemmed from the bizarre actions of a burly young man. He dared to enter the women's restroom to plot something inappropriate inside. John saw him and was only trying to discipline him. However, lacking a punch but having too much kick, he ended up using excessive force. As a result, he was left bruised and battered. Facing the possibility of being sued and having to pay damages, the police required her to call a guardian to resolve the situation. John had to call her seemingly cold uncle to seek assistance from a family member. Just as she picked up the phone, her uncle was the one calling first, but the voice was very unfamiliar. Identifying themselves as police, they announced that Jin-man had passed away. Upon hearing this, John's emotions plummeted. She got into the car and headed to the hospital to identify her relative, her face reflecting deep sorrow. Sitting in the car, John recalled a year ago when she moved out to live independently and started her student life. Mr. Jin-man reinforced the door meticulously, using bulletproof steel of the highest quality. She told about how her boss had embezzled her overtime pay, leading to a recent accident that left him injured and limping serves him right. Jin-man remained icy, showing no surprise as he revealed that his actions made his niece feel suddenly alert. Didn't think that just because he had a scarred face like a thug and was handsome, he could say whatever he wants. Jin-man brushed off the gossip from his niece, carefully took a picture of her student ID, and reminded her to stay safe. The identification number will follow you from birth until death, so you must remember it. Little did she know that those seemingly meaningless numbers would be the last words her uncle ever said to her. In her sorrowful reverie, the driver suddenly brightened and introduced himself as a friend of Jin-man. He mentioned that he had seen her many times since she was little, that it had been a while since they last met, and he wanted to ask about Jin-man's health. She was enjoying the conversation until she heard that friend had just taken his last breath, leaving her unable to hide her shock and heartbreak. He took the initiative to help the girl organize the funeral and offered her comforting words in her time of sorrow. The police announced that Mr. Jin-man had taken his own life by cutting his throat. The autopsy results revealed nothing out of the ordinary. Although she was bewildered by the results, Jia admitted that this choice was very much in line with her uncle's character. She quickly signed the documents to complete the procedures. Seeing her uncle was wheeled into the morgue, his leg marked with an enigmatic tattoo, leaving her unable to hide her shock and heartbreak. It was here that she reunited with Jong-min, a childhood friend who had once been very warm and kind to her. Since she had no pictures of her uncle, Jong-min helped by editing an old family photo they took together a long time ago. This friend, studying computer science, had received a lot of support from Uncle Jin-man. When he hired him for a part-time job, his job editing an agricultural plumbing website allowed him to help John as a way to repay his benefactor. Jong-min was the one who discovered the incident. and reported it to the police, even offering to clean the bathroom where the body was found to help his friend. The funeral took place soon after, with many unfamiliar faces attending as childhood friends of Jin-man. She had to remember everyone who sent flowers until she saw the name Rong-han, which left her stunned as she had never heard it before. Outside the funeral, others were smoking and eagerly talking about meeting Jin-man in hell. Meanwhile, Jong-min finished cleaning the bathroom and stumbled upon a suspicious bloodstain. He immediately opened the cabinet and discovered a neatly tucked Nokia 1280 phone. At the funeral, Jin-man's friends talked gossip, speculating that he had taken his own life due to business failures and overwhelming debt. She felt a deep sadness for her friend, who had once been a true gentleman, always ready to protect the weak. However, some whispered that Jin-man was the leader of a notorious gang in Busan. Or perhaps he was a secret agent working against the North Korean regime. It was truly absurd. How could such things happen to someone with a report card full of Fs? Unable to bear it any longer, her friend staggered over, drunk, to clarify the situation. He recounted how his father had squandered all the money from selling their house on gambling. Afterward, he was still desperate and sought to end his life in his room using charcoal. At that moment, Jin-man appeared with a huge bag of money and saved his family from a devastating loss. Jong sat nearby, listening to the entire story, her gaze fixed on her uncle's portrait, filled with a profound silence. She suddenly realized that she knew nothing about this uncle at all, even though they had lived under the same roof for 10 years. As they drove home, they found it puzzling that the girl hadn't shed a single tear throughout the entire funeral proceedings, except for her friend Jong-min sitting beside her, who sensitively encouraged her, acknowledging how hard she had truly been through. Stepping into the familiar house, she felt a heavy weight in her heart. Now she was left alone, playing by herself. She even imagined her uncle Jin-man lying there, casually watching a movie with his legs crossed. Snapping back to reality and realizing it was just an illusion, she burst into tears. She cried with all her heart, feeling utterly alone. Her uncle must have suffered greatly, trying to appear fine while inside, his tears were like an endless ocean. Just as her face was drenched in tears, Jong-min appeared to return her phone. He unintentionally witnessed her vulnerable moment after many days of holding back. Jong wanted Jong-min to stay, and just like that, she fell asleep peacefully on her friend's shoulder. When she woke up, Jong began to fiddle with the old phone. She opened with a message demanding payment after a deposit of 70 million, and was surprised to see her account balance at 18.7 billion. Both of them couldn't believe their eyes. How could her uncle, a simple water vendor, have amassed such wealth? They then examined the sales website that Jong-min had previously helped Jin-man with in greater detail. Jong-min realized that it was merely a facade hiding an illicit sales operation under the brand Murthep Health. As she rummaged through her memories, Jong realized that it matched the tattoo on her uncle's leg. What was particularly striking about this website was that it exclusively sold specialized weapons at exorbitant prices. How could her uncle have been involved in such illegal activities? At that moment, a message from a buyer arrived, still demanding the delivery of the goods. Jong took a risk and informed the buyer that the store was temporarily closed, asking them to send their account number for a refund. To their surprise, what they received in return was a threatening message. If Jin-man was out of the picture, then the next target was definitely Jong. Jong-min quickly covered the message to reassure her and suggested that she call the police for safety. But at that moment, the doorbell rang, signaling that someone had arrived. The woman introduced herself as Min-hye, coming to discuss matters related to Jin-man. However, it was highly suspicious as she was equipped with gear that was extremely well prepared. Just as they were confused and unsure of how to handle the situation, John's uncle's phone buzzed with a message not to let anyone else in. It must be me. The knocking at the door became urgent. The woman was right outside. Coming back time to when Jong was 7, it was the first time she met her uncle. Though she was small and adorable, she was always the target of teasing. Jin-man faced criticism for being absent for 7 years and 8 months before finally showing his face again. Guessing that the little girl wouldn't know who he was, Jin-man emphasized that she should remember her uncle's name. Just a few days later, his elderly mother passed away. Jin-man suggested conducting an autopsy because the death seemed too sudden, but his brother angrily stated that she had already endured painful surgeries for bile duct cancer. He couldn't bear to see their mother suffer anymore. To ease the situation, his sister-in-law asked Jin-man to take his niece home, as the couple could handle the arrangements by themselves. Just as he left, someone arrived to offer condolences in a very formal manner, introducing themselves as a friend of Jin-man. He inquired about why Jin-man was nowhere to be seen. Meanwhile, in the cold, dark room, there was not a hint of light. Jin-man confided in his niece. Though she would never see her again, death wasn't something too frightening. Everyone must go through it eventually. What matters was how we choose to face it. People truly disappeared only when we forgot them. So, Xian had to be truly strong, even facing death, making the opponent scream in pain. Just like the mighty lions in the forests shown in the documentary playing on the TV. Suddenly, a call came in for Jin-man. After listening, he fell into deep contemplation. He assured her that he must go to the funeral and asked the girl to stay inside the house quietly. If anyone claimed to be a friend, they would have to solve a riddle he created in order to be allowed in. Xian was confident, and she believed that to create a riddle for success, one needed knowledge, experience, and wisdom. Before leaving, Jin-man reassured his niece that he would return soon. Not long after he left, a stranger actually came looking for the girl. Xian innocently asked the question, but the stranger didn't bother to respond and simply began to pick the lock. Finally, he successfully broke in. Unexpectedly, as he approached Xian, a masked hero lunged in, grabbing him and slamming the door shut. The girl was terrified by the shouts coming from behind that door. A few minutes later, another young man entered. He held in his hand the answer, knowledge, experience, and wisdom, confirming that he was a friend of Jin-man. He requested the girl to go into the room to play safely. The girl obediently complied, noticing clearly the young man's hand adorned with many unique rings. This time, the sound of the intense impact echoed in her ears. She quietly opened the door to look and accidentally caught the moment they were brutally stabbing her uncle's friend. The door swung open, and the footsteps of strangers approached, searching for the girl. They crouched under the bed, but all they found was the doll. Noticing the wide-open window, he caught a whiff of the escape route taken by the young girl. He approached to check and saw John clinging to the iron railing outside, unable to help but admire the girl's survival instincts. The weakened arm of John caused the girl to fall freely in panic. Thanks to her grandparents who had bent over backwards to help the girl land safely on the old sofa, the girl quickly scrambled away, running in a frantic hurry. As the assassin was right behind her, following closely. But in the midst of misfortune, just after running for a while, the girl was hit by a car and was rushed to the hospital for emergency treatment. When she woke up, the girl had become an orphan. Everything had happened so quickly, not even a full day had passed. Just hours after her parents were murdered at the funeral home, that night John lay alone on the hospital bed in the cold room. She suddenly saw the wolf-like uncle with eyes shining like headlights, approaching with a hand adorned with the ring that John had recognized. He moved closer to the girl, intending to devour her. The scream from that nightmare jolted John awake in the stillness of the night. But it was exactly the warning for the girl, as the thugs had begun to lie in wait at that location. The scoundrel eagerly approached the hospital bed of his target. The gun was cocked, ready to fire, but there was a mix of frustration and confusion when he found no one there. John stumbled on her uneven legs, running through the hospital corridors in a desperate escape. The last place this little girl could hide was the wax museum, knowing he was standing right behind that door. John daringly opened the box that was shared with the dead body, and it seemed that fate had arranged for the cold, still figure inside to be none other than her beloved mother. The girl, without thinking, tightly embraced her mother who had fallen into her eternal sleep. The scoundrel outside opened each compartment to check carefully. In the tense situation, with danger hanging by a thread, one of his accomplices suddenly barged in. What followed was an intense, fiery combat between him and someone else, leaving the girl inside to grip her mother's hand tightly for strength. Gunfire's sound rang out, and to her surprise, it was Uncle Jin-man who appeared, gently lifting the girl onto his shoulder. He didn't forget to cover the face of his unfortunate sister-in-law, turning away with eyes filled with deep sorrow and hatred. Right after that, the two moved into Uncle Jin-man's strong and secure home. They took care of their belongings, each person responsible for their own things. Little Jian fell to the ground, waiting for help. Simply because he could not replace her parents in doing what a parent was meant to do. From now on, she had to be independent and stand firm on her own 2 feet, for the strongest wolf is the lone wolf. So the girl got up and started to clean up her belongings, looking quite pitiful. Despite the handsome, cold-faced men in front of her, Jin-man always remained secretly by the girl's side. Every night, Jin would dream of nightmares, drenched in cold sweat. The doctor even suspected that the girl had fallen into a state of mutism, unable to communicate due to the shock of losing both her father and mother. Jin-man blamed himself immensely. He stood outside the room, constantly punishing himself for causing the tragedy to a once peaceful family. At school, Jin was bullied and relentlessly attacked by classmates, with only her close friend Dong-min standing up for her, until she heard them constantly spreading rumors about her parents. Jin retaliated by using the chair in her hands as a weapon against the bullies. As the rain suddenly poured down, Jin looked around and saw that all her classmates had family members to pick them up, or at least an umbrella to shield themselves as they left. Only Jin felt lost and alone in the cold world, accepting her wobbly steps as she walked home in the rain. Uncle Jin-man drove by in his pickup truck but didn't tell the girl to get in, as the rain showed no signs of letting up. The two of them remained silent, each lost in their own world and thoughts. "I don't want to bother you," she thought, as he wanted her to be independent, pressing the gas and driving away, leaving Jin feeling incredibly disappointed. In the days that followed, the rain continued to fall, and the house remained steeped in silence. As soon as the girl sat down at the dining table, her uncle stood up and left. They always kept to themselves while watching TV to avoid disturbing each other. If they needed to buy school supplies, they would leave a note on the refrigerator. Money was also exchanged in the same manner. However, the amount John wanted was much larger than its actual value. So the uncle, a poor plumber, was careful with money and no longer left cash notes on the fridge. The girl stared at what her uncle had stuck on the wall, her face blank with confusion, unable to understand. Jin-man believed that she had to use her willpower and inner strength to overcome her own fears. Outsiders like them had no ability to heal the girl. One day, Jean was locked in a storage room at school by a group of classmates, and the door was locked tightly. The girl quietly sat there, enduring it all without a single cry for help. It wasn't until darkness enveloped her that the wolf-like figure with the ring-adorned hand appeared again. The haunting memories flooded back, causing the girl to panic as she violently slammed against the door, frantically calling out for help. In her most desperate moment, it was unexpectedly Uncle Jin-man who broke the lock and opened the door. The person she had always hoped for had finally appeared. She immediately rushed into Uncle Jin-man's arms, seeking his protection from the years of despair. The girl must have thought that her uncle had promised to return soon. Why had he only appeared now? He gently comforted her, offering apologies for everything. Though it was heartbreaking, he ultimately succeeded in his ruthless decision. They enjoyed grilled meat together, a favorite dish they had previously fought over fiercely. The girl even praised her uncle's exceptional grilling skills, leaving him momentarily speechless. With a beaming smile, he felt a happiness that made his face appear very taut. Returning to the present, at the moment Jin-man had just passed away. His Chinese language teacher came to the house to look for him. She insisted on entering the house at all costs. To build trust, she even recited in Chinese, praising her as the smart and beautiful granddaughter in the eyes of Uncle Jin-man. However, Jean was very proficient in Chinese and knew well that it was a compliment mixed with sarcasm from her. Because her uncle would never comment positively about her, he only teased her. With the plan to seduce falling apart, she had to awkwardly turn away and promise to meet again another time. As soon as she left, they resumed their research on that website. It operated based on identification codes for each member and was divided into 4 different levels, with specific regulations regarding the quality and quantity of items. For example, red for paint users would allow them to choose weapons with high damage potential. Purple was designated for spies, equipped with small gadgets and listening devices. Yellow was reserved for the cleanup team, equipped with special cleaners to remove hazardous substances. Finally, the color blue had no specific category at all. According to the regulations of this system, members of Murthep were not allowed to attack those designated with the blue code. On the contrary, they were required to protect them. If a blue code posed a threat to life, those assigned the code had to protect the blue code holders. Interestingly, the blue codes belonged to Jin-man and John as well. While still confused and just smiling in disbelief, a loud explosion shook the ground. As soon as they stepped outside, they saw that the entire door and surrounding walls had been destroyed. Then, the drones continuously fired bullets as they were equipped with heat-seeking technology surrounding the house. Both could only hang their heads in despair, realizing that calling for help was useless since the signal had been cut off. They quietly tried to escape through the back door, but almost got caught, quickly shutting the door behind them. Fortunately, both the glass and the door were bulletproof, providing them with temporary safety. They couldn't have imagined that just a few minutes of remaining still would bring in more drones for support. They were equipped with bombs that were directly attached to the glass door, which then exploded loudly, shattering the glass into pieces as if there had never been a separation. The drones slowly entered the house, using AI to identify people and aim accurately. The two were separated in different rooms, using their fear to hide in the wardrobe and staying safe after the initial barrage. Until it revealed its ability to place bombs, no matter how brave they were, they couldn't withstand it. His life was hanging by a thread, suspended between life and death. Fortunately, Jian arrived just in time, using her slingshot to aim accurately and successfully shatter the drone, rescuing her best friend. On the other hand, the gangsters gathered to prepare for an assault. The boss, Kim, appeared, wielding a sharp knife to create a clean cut on his hand before discarding the identification code placed inside. This was also a declaration of his intention to defy the laws of Murthep. He then reunited with Sung-jo to carefully check their weapons, preparing to set off on their mission to conquer John, with the promise of a generous reward. We return to the past when John was just a 17-year-old girl, and this house had undergone a complete renovation. Jian had only a small wish to have a window in her bedroom. The repair crew negotiated a price 3 times higher, but under the calm gaze of her wealthy uncle, it seemed futile. They quickly turned around and lowered their price to double the original amount. Fortunately, they received approval for the new price. While waiting for them, the two had to move to another place. But it wasn't to attend a concert or ask for autographs from celebrities. Instead, they went to the nearby mountain. The incident occurred when Mr. Jin-man suddenly had a pain in his legs. As night began to fall, they had to stop at a nearby cave. Moreover, their smartphones had no signal. Uncle Jin-man was drenched in sweat from a cold brought on by Mother Nature. John was furious to find herself pushed to this dead end. Uncle Jin-man began his lecture with a familiar phrase to hear carefully. John, if you're in a difficult situation, the right thing to do is to stay calm and find a solution, not to determine who's right or wrong. Fortunately, Jin-man had a map, allowing him to quickly analyze the situation. The only way to survive was to cover the remaining 5 kilometers to the rescue station. Given the current situation, John had to go there alone. This brave girl immediately agreed, because if she didn't, her last remaining relative would die. Before leaving, Uncle Jin-man equipped his granddaughter with a leaf, because he knew that Jian might have to encounter those hungry wild boars. No one could predict whether they would charge and tear her apart. Additionally, whenever you find yourself in danger, look up at the sky and call out my name, Jin-man, 3 times. Surely, this uncle would appear just like the 5-7-year-old girls trapped in the storage room. Jian found those words utterly ridiculous, especially in this situation. She wondered how her uncle, despite having a cold and a painful leg, could remain so alert and talkative. See, just waiting for that, Jin-man started to throw a fit, acting as if he were in great pain. Jin-man took on the role with curiosity, trying a few basic paths and confidently assuring that he would return soon. After successfully calling for help, she didn't know that it was actually a new training exercise that Uncle Jin-man had carefully devised. Even though it was dangerous, he had to let Jian face her own crisis. There, Ba Xian's gang had prepared a massive hunting rifle. Finally, John found the phone to call for help. However, as soon as she opened the door, a horrifying scene unfolded before her eyes. Hungry wolves were tearing apart their prey and immediately lunged to surround her. In fear, John stumbled and fell, watching them approach her with a menacing intensity. They became aggressive, biting tightly onto Jian's sleeve. She had to use the stone beside her to save herself. Facing the alpha wolf, Jian focused intently, raising her slingshot and recalling her uncle's teachings. Only the weak would tremble. The strong one must open their eyes wide, focus on the target, and take it down. Following the instructions correctly, the girl successfully saved herself. At that moment, the sound of gunfire echoed loudly. Uncle Jin-man, strong as an ox, appeared in the distance and came to the rescue of his little niece. In the face of Jian's suspicion, Uncle just needed a way to justify being a MU fan when he dove into the cave, as it had given him magical powers. Help me recover quickly so I can engage with the online community. And that other weapon was borrowed from a friend. It's just that this little niece doesn't know how to use it, so I had to give her the slingshot for self-defense. Since then, John had taken a particular liking to the sport of slingshot shooting and had continuously practiced to hit his targets. However, compared to those efforts, using modern guns still seemed more impressive and had a more powerful impact. That was the first time Jian had come into contact with this dangerous thing. As time passed, the assembly process became extremely quick and precise. If Uncle topped won a server, then I really had to step up my game. John's posture was also becoming more extremely professional. Returning to the present moment after escaping danger in a critical situation, the 2 kids had used the steel wardrobe door to step outside, while also taking the opportunity to eliminate the second drone as swiftly as possible. And it immediately fired rounds continuously at the door, but both of them remained steadfast. However, a few seconds of ceasefire later, the silence in the air felt off, as if something was wrong. As soon as they peeked out, they saw a bomb attached to the side of the wardrobe. Before they could determine what was right or wrong, they had already been thrown several meters away. The 2 had no choice but to sit still and wait for death to come for them. Fortunately, just as it was about to come to an end, the Chinese language teacher arrived. Min-hye took aim accurately and took it down from a great distance. When Dong-min, in fear, tried to run away, Min-hye immediately subdued him. She tried to scan the wrist ID to learn his identity, but it yielded no results. Lean administered a dose of sleeping medication to calm things down. It was time to confront John. Thinking that Min-hye wanted to take her life, she immediately readied her slingshot to aim at her face. However, she was a top-notch assassin in terms of speed and martial arts, while John was far inferior and was quickly overwhelmed after just a few moves. Similar to Dong-min, she scanned John's ID and found it was a blue code, indicating he was her protected target. At that moment, a metal candy flew towards them at breakneck speed. Min-hye swiftly pushed John down, saving him from a clear defeat. Her quick judgment and movement clearly showed that Min-hye was no ordinary opponent. She was exceptionally skilled. The mastermind behind the recent attack was none other than Sung Jo. He had no idea that Min-hye was there to support John, so he remained carefree, joking with the driver. Get ready for the next hot hex performance. Min-hye was very well aware of John's history. From now, John had only looked up to the sky and called out his uncle's name 3 times. The first time was when he was trapped in the storage room at school. The second time was when he was bullied at school. And the last time was when his boss at the part-time job cheated him out of his pay. And she knew better than anyone what had happened in all three of those instances. The group of friends who bullied him were transferred to another school and ultimately had to drop out. As for that uncle, he had an accident, and all of it was handled by Uncle Jin-man. In addition, John had a blue code on his wrist, just like his uncle, ensuring that he would be protected from danger. Sung-jo continued to prepare his attacks to deal with the situation. Min-hye set off a smoke bomb to obstruct his line of sight. The next drone appeared through the thick smoke. Min-hye was formidable, and with her sharp eyes, she easily took it down. Little did she know, she had inadvertently fallen into his line of sight. Before she could realize it, a metal candy struck her hand, causing her to drop her weapon right in the middle of the room. Next to Sung-jo, many heroes were ready for this ambush to target John. While Min-hye tended to her wounds, Dong-min woke up and was trying to grab the weapon in front of her for self-defense. Unexpectedly, she was caught off guard and immediately remembered her uncle's advice, to find the opponent's blind spot. Lean came up with the idea of using a mirror placed on a broomstick to check from a low angle. However, it also failed at mid-level. Only when she raised it to a higher angle did Sung-jo become careless and miss his shot. John steeled himself, climbed onto the refrigerator, and made a jump to turn the dire situation around. Fortunately, he managed to dodge the deadly bullet, which was just a few millimeters away from the metal candy flying at high speed. Successfully reaching for the gun was made possible, because her short arms couldn't reach it, so she immediately flipped the sofa over. To her surprise, she discovered another valuable treasure that Uncle Jin-man had kept hidden all this time. It was a rifle, complete with an impressive scope that looked formidable. Under Min-hye's meticulous guidance, John successfully assembled the rifle, and then prepared a steady aim to fire directly at the opponent, ready to take them down. Indeed, Sung-jo was startled, realizing how close he had come to ending his role right there. Just then, the cunning driver attempted to make a move on young Min, but unfortunately for him, Min-hye remained alert and stunningly composed. She dealt with the scoundrel in an instant, and the underworld crowd quickly hushed at the mention of Min-hye's name. Knowing that this was not an easy target to defeat, Min-hye ordered the two kids to head towards the storage room, to find the door leading to the multi-health store. Although she still didn't trust completely, the way the metal candies were flying around made it urgent. John had no choice but to trust the woman he had just met. Young Min, paralyzed by fear, couldn't get up, leaving part of John's body in the line of fire. He had loaded the chamber, ready to pull the trigger with deadly accuracy, but no one could underestimate Min-hye. She had promised to protect the girl for Jin-man, so she couldn't let him take action so easily. Unfortunately, when she shot back, the stray bullet only took out the driver. All three of them made it to the storage room safely. Min-hye seemed to know the place well. She pulled aside the steel curtain with a mischievous wink, even though the gangsters had gathered in full force. Following Min-hye's guidance, John reached the secret door that led to the store. She entered both her and her uncle's birth dates, but neither was correct. It wasn't until she calmed down that she remembered her uncle had instructed her to memorize the citizen ID number. Without hesitation, she entered the ID number, and after a facial recognition check, the elevator began to move automatically. It brought them into a new world they had never known. As they entered, the stalls of Mercy Help matched the website's description perfectly. John was taken aback by one surprise after another, while Dong-min showed great excitement. Just then, a masked figure appeared, pointing a gun directly at them. He greeted John in a friendly manner, even introducing himself as brother. Rewinding to the past, Jin-man received a call from his underlings informing him that, somehow, Balo was still alive, and was currently at his mother's funeral. It was that Jin-man realized the terrible scenario and asked his underlings to protect John for him. On the way, he tried to contact his brother and sister-in-law, but no one answered. In his urgency, he was stopped by a car blocking the way, thinking it was just some minor inconvenience or malfunction. But in reality, it was an ambush, with metal candies flying relentlessly from those who intended to kill him. Meanwhile, in the storage room filled with agricultural pipes, a fierce combat scene was unfolding. Min-hye was completely confident with the rifle aimed at the leader, the bald man named Kim. Unfortunately, she missed her target, which sparked a fierce exchange of fire before a brief ceasefire to reload. Just when silence was needed the most, Sung-jo became the disruptor, constantly asking questions over the radio. This frustrated the bald man, leading him to cut off the signal. Min-hye seemed to activate a form of hockey, dodging every bullet effortlessly, scoring a perfect 10 without any mistakes. On top of that, she cleverly pretended to be clumsy, making them curious enough to turn on the lights. That was all she needed. With both guns in hand, she waved goodbye to him. A moment later, the space fell silent again as she calmly sat perched on the cargo box above. She was just waiting for the person below to let their guard down before suddenly advancing to catch them off guard. If she ever found herself in a disadvantageous situation, she would quickly dodge and circle around the opponents. Her movements were both swift and decisive, leading to an increasing number of fallen teammates. Kim, the bald leader, ordered his men to shoot at the ceiling, believing that would create enough light for a final showdown. However, it only made things a bit difficult for Min-hye. It certainly couldn't take down this top-tier assassin. In the end, Kim faced off against Min-hye, but it seemed that this time, she was operating on an entirely different level. They exchanged blows in a highly intense battle, showcasing all their top-tier skills. Just when Kim gained the upper hand, he aimed to take Min-hye's life, not realizing she had such extraordinary techniques up her sleeve. With the sharp gel knife poised, Min-hye showcased her resilience and endurance, emerging victorious. She bid a swift farewell to Kim, the bald leader. Meanwhile, Brother had confronted John at the multi-help store, demanding that he handcuff Dong-min. John pretended to comply, but then distracted him and seized the opportunity to overpower him. He even demonstrated a variety of impressive locks that left Dong-min staring in astonishment. But the talent she had for fighting came from a long and tragic story in her past. When John was a young girl, she experienced her first innocent love with her boyfriend. The two of them had a wonderful time playing at the amusement park. She even showcased her strength by protecting her boyfriend against gravity with her sturdy legs. But her face was still incredibly innocent, and her smile was bright and radiant. On the scooter without helmets, they shared those simple, happy moments of a youthful, carefree time. Upon arriving in front of her house, her boyfriend suggested a kiss to end this wonderful day. Just when everything seemed perfect, Uncle Jin-man suddenly appeared to catch his niece and prevent her from falling. Then, Uncle Jin-man sternly lectured the boy without missing a beat, giving an impromptu traffic law lesson on the spot. With a stern expression, he wanted to confront the boy for flirting with his niece. Uncle Jin-man coordinated perfectly, making the boy so frightened that he immediately fled the scene. Jin-man was extremely annoyed to see his niece's friend not even have the decency to lower his head and ask for his permission. He expressed his dissatisfaction, saying there was absolutely no manners at all. From that point on, whenever he encountered Jian, her boyfriend would turn and walk away, leaving her feeling utterly disappointed. Upon returning home, Jian complained that because of her uncle, many of her friends had cut off contact with her. From Min-suk to her close friends who often visited, even her tutor and her ex-boyfriend had distanced themselves. It was only now that Jin-man revealed they were all terrible people. Min-suk had stolen his watch, and only when caught red-handed did he bow his head to apologize. The tutor had the traits of a potential pervert. The clearest evidence was that a week after Jian stopped attending lessons, Min-suk was arrested for harassment. As for her boyfriend, he was simply too young and already showed traits of a troublemaker by violating traffic laws. In short, Uncle Jin-man did everything he could to protect his niece. Still unsatisfied with that explanation, John revealed that she was working hard to earn money and planned to move out on her own to avoid facing her uncle. If that's the case, then just a single hit to this face, and uncle will be fine with it right away. After sealing the deal, John tried to play dirty by attacking from behind, but that was not enough for her handsome uncle. On top of that, he teased her for being too slow. Stubbornly trying a few more times, she ultimately received nothing but pain and humiliation. While practicing, John nimbly cornered her uncle with the forklift to make her move, unaware that the hunter had become the prey. Uncle Jin-man was not only handsome but also incredibly sharp. He moved with such agility that it was truly impressive. He tried to hold her back gently at first, but then more forcefully, using a leg sweep to bring her down to the ground. Or, more forcefully, he executed a beautifully crafted chokehold, even receiving a nod of approval from Jin-man. This gave him the confidence to showcase his skills without fear of being reprimanded. When the girl woke up, they began to shift blame onto each other, with her saying, "Aren't you the one who gave me the orders? When has anyone ever witnessed it? Who would vouch for it?" John exasperated by these young men with their tough exteriors but childlike hearts. She was determined to take her revenge with a sharp arrow of resentment. John went to Ba Xian's Thai restaurant to ask for a few basic techniques to fight against her uncle. The tuition was supposed to be 1 million a month, but that amount was too large for a 17-year-old like John. So, even though she could only pay a tenth of that, Ba Xian nodded in agreement. During the first training session, she was caught off guard and took a direct hit. Time passed quickly as the training became increasingly intense. Each technique was taught with great care, and even while working part-time, John continued to practice relentlessly. At first, the customers were unfamiliar, but soon, the tuition money began to flow steadily into her hands. The girl still couldn't reach the handsome face of this quirky man. I diligently trained for endurance every day, not giving up on the difficult exercises. Even though she was called as a slow-moving snail, she still brushed it off and continued to train hard. During one time she attempted to sneak attack, she was embarrassingly defeated until she became closer to the guests here. Her skills also improved significantly, and she was still eager to train anywhere, anytime. It could be from the restaurant to the bathroom, even to the moments when they blended together, laughing and having fun. She had almost fully grasped Master Pashin's teachings, and they celebrated together with great excitement. That night, while Zhang was walking, she accidentally came across her friend being blocked by a group of careless people who were about to cause trouble. She bravely stepped forward, and even though she was surrounded by tall, intimidating men, the fierce determination in her eyes never wavered. She prepared herself for the duel, and thanks to her hard training, she fought with skill and emerged without a scratch. She was even a bit surprised by her own combat abilities, realizing how formidable she truly was. Just when the scoundrel was about to use a weapon, Jin-man appeared to intervene. His hand was injured, but he showed no signs of pain whatsoever. The police arrived just in time, remembering that her friend had quickly run to report the incident, receiving a reassuring nod from Jin-man. Mr. Jin-man expressed his concern for his niece, knowing that while she could protect herself, she wasn't yet able to defeat someone armed. The girl wasn't interested in listening, she just wanted to go to Master Pa's house to increase her combat strength. However, when she arrived, Master Pa had disappeared without a trace, along with the money from his loyal customers. He left behind only one thing, a message for Jong. She was no longer the slow-moving snail. Returning to the present, she realized that the masked man had installed cameras to monitor her everywhere. From the school to even the bathroom, she decided to give him a lightning kick. Even with the gun pressed against his temple, he remained resolute, refusing to say a word and only wanting to quickly supply Min-hye with ammunition. Otherwise, they would all face a miserable fate in the afterlife. Meanwhile, Jin-man had sneaked into the adjacent room, quietly turning the lights back on as if no one was around. It seemed that the browser was allergic to the light, causing him to tremble and stutter even more than before. Just like the warm uncle who had come to his side, Jong quickly covered his eyes to limit his exposure to the light. He stammered, about to reveal everything, but Jin-man heartlessly stuffed a rag into his mouth. Then he manipulated the situation, suggesting that the man was merely pretending to be pitiful, to hide his sinister plot of having been watching her all along. Jin-man immediately moved to the impressive, high-tech server rack. His eyes lit up like headlights. As soon as she turned her back, the browser slipped away, leaving behind a warning not to trust that friend. Jong hurriedly chased after him but remained on high alert, successfully dodging his surprise attack with a powerful kick. Not giving up on his chance, he intentionally led her to stumble into a secret basement and slammed the door shut behind her. Not giving up on his chance, he deliberately guided her to fall into a hidden basement, and then slammed the door shut behind her. Meanwhile, the browser now had advanced equipment to easily subdue Jin-man with a stun gun, capturing him in the process. Seeing her friend in danger, she felt a surge of worry, but the drama was far from over. He continued to tightly bind her limbs and roughly stuffed a cloth into her mouth, just as he had done to her before. All the cameras clearly showed his face as he demanded that she retrieve the contract placed in the second drawer. That was precisely the contract from the multi-health organization, stipulating that if President Jun were to die or be temporarily absent due to an accident, then John would be the heir and responsible for all matters related to accounting, management, and personnel. Then there were countless other trivial clauses that he recited from memory, but Jong had no time to think about them. She immediately signed to confirm her agreement, with the only request being to be let out of there. As if committing to obey John unconditionally, he led her outside. As soon as they reunited, the browser revealed that Jong knew very well that the organization would be attacked and that he could be in grave danger at any moment. In a moment of carelessness, Jong quietly grabbed the gun from his pocket and demanded that he release her friend. No, absolutely not. After encountering this Dong-min, the boss lost his life. John froze for a few seconds, but when the browser let his guard down, she immediately delivered a powerful strike. Jong raised her voice to intervene, feeling caught in a difficult situation as she no longer knew whom to trust. Dong-min quickly justified himself, claiming that he had been by her side, helping her organize the funeral for Uncle Jin-man. They had gone through thick and thin together after the chaotic battle at home. She had no reason to be the killer of Uncle Jin-man, the person he considered a benefactor. On the contrary, he accused Dong-min of doing it to eliminate all evidence of his own crimes. The browser added that Jin-man could never have been the one to take his own life. As long as she opened the video titled 01404, she would uncover all the secrets surrounding Uncle Jin-man's departure. Dong-min suddenly panicked as he saw Jong slowly approach the computer and place her hand on the mouse to search. Stop right there. If you accidentally click on that, the security door will be disabled, and those killers could break in. Jong didn't want to believe it, but it was hard to dismiss, given the urgency of the situation. Taking advantage of the moment, he revealed. Years ago, he was the one who informed Uncle Jin-man when she was locked in a storage room at school by her classmates. One side spoke the truth from her memory, while the other shook their head in denial. As she was grappling with the choice between her heart and her mind, Uncle Jin-man's words echoed in her ears. Previously, 13-year-old Jong loved taking care of cats, so she brought this stray cat home. Uncle Jin-man didn't agree, but he didn't oppose her either. He just gently reminded her that every decision came with its own binding responsibilities. If you take in a pet, you must also endure the feeling of loss when it passes away. The stubborn girl remained determined to adopt it and even gave it a loving name. In her current situation, she had to make her own decision instead of holding the mouse. she grabbed the gun beside her. She ordered the browser to reload Min-hye's weapon, but he hesitated, not wanting to leave. But because it was the command of the powerful master, he had no choice but to obey. He only wanted to retrieve the beanie that covered his face, and he left her a pair of glasses, placing them solemnly on the table before he felt at ease to leave. Along with that was a reminder that she must absolutely not leave the shopping center. He encountered Min-hye again at the plumbing supply warehouse. The reunion after many years apart made her break into an involuntary smile. Meanwhile, Young-min hugged Jong tightly, refusing to let go. "Thank you so much for choosing to trust and protect me. However, I was one of the ones who locked you in that storage room on that fateful day." Young-min had a knack for backtracking that was even more skilled than the best of them. Before Jong could react, she received a powerful electric shock from him, and she gradually fell into unconsciousness. She realized too late that she had to pay the price for her recent mistake. This was just like the time before her cat took its last breath, when Jong had cried like rain. Uncle Jin-man quietly stayed by her side to offer comfort, allowing her to work through her own pain. Seeing his exaggerated smile made her realize just how much he had invested in his performance. On the other hand, Sungjo's crew had a new toy, designed to be very high-end. Young-min and his classmate entered the house and saw a man sitting inside. Before either of them could react, they were attacked by the man. The man demanded that the two of them hack into a website within 3 minutes. It turned out that the mastermind behind the cat was Jong-han. "I heard that these two kids had infiltrated Jin-man's online store. Therefore, he wanted to verify the authenticity." With the time running out, Young-min succeeded, but his friend was shot on the spot. Young-min seemed unafraid upon witnessing this. Instead, he appeared somewhat exhilarated. He asked Jong-han and his accomplices if they would take responsibility for cleaning up the body. Jong-han demanded that Young-min retrieve the server from Jin-man's online store. That day, Young-min had been working in Jin-man's plumbing warehouse. Trong Koang Loi John Vong Mat Jin-man, Young-min de Sub Dung But Quay Video Tim Kim Sung Quan Loi Veo Qua Hung Truck Twen, as well as any related clues, but there was nothing useful found in the warehouse. Just as Young-min wondered what was inside, Jin-man suddenly spoke up, asking what was going on, and Young-min panicked, quickly saying that it was nothing. Jin-man didn't ask any further questions. Just then, Young-min received a message from Yang-han, notifying him that there was still 1 day left. Young-min made up an excuse that he had a stomachache and asked to use the restroom. After regaining his composure, he planned to find a way into the online store. Just as he was about to open the door to enter a room, a sudden sound from Jin-man startled him. Clearly, there was no sign of Jin-man there, so where was the sound coming from? Young-min carefully approached the living room and noticed a small dot above. Just then, Jin-man walked in and asked Young-min if he had been scared. When Yang-han was at home, he would be in the warehouse, making it very inconvenient to move around, so he had installed a speaker. Young-min quickly explained that he had just come in to check out the house. Additionally, Jin-man had heard that Young-min was majoring in computer engineering, so he wanted to ask Young-min for help with something that was wrong with his computer. This was also something Young-min wanted. After examining the computer, Young-min suspected that it had been infected with malware. First, he would format it and save all the files that could be recovered. Jin-man offered to pay for the repairs, but Young-min declined. The reason was that his relationship with Yang was very close. Jin-man bat ngo hoi Young-min hok lop mei, boi v truok day on chua bao geo gap ban bi kwa Yang. So he was very curious about when the two of them had become friends. Young-min admitted that he was a middle school classmate, especially when he mentioned the incident of Yang being locked up at school. Jin-man immediately interrupted Young-min, as if he had been expecting him to say that. Then he said he needed to go to the warehouse to clean up, and that Young-min should come there when he was done. After confirming that Jin-man had left quickly, he synchronized the computer. He even complained that it was all too easy. What Young-min didn't know was that every move he made was being monitored by Jin-man in the basement. That night, when Young-min returned home, Jin-man also began using the computer. And this time, he was logging into the assassin's online store. He successfully obtained the password for the website, along with all the data. As he was feeling pleased, he received a message from the other party, complimenting him on a job well done. Then he heard the sound of the door unlocking, and Young-min realized that Yang was definitely coming to kill him. So, before the assassin could act, he typed in the code at lightning speed. Just as the assassin aimed the gun at Young-min, Young-min finally set it up, stood up, and warned the assassin, "If you kill me like this, everything will be in vain." After hearing this, the assassin immediately reported to Yang-han that the order received was to kill Young-min. Just as the assassin was about to strike, Young-min shouted that he was very talented and skilled at hacking. "I can help Yang-han achieve what he wants," Young-min said. Finally, Young-min's plan became a reality. Back in the present, he opened folder 404, which contained the video of Jin-man hanging. Seeing that it was just that, Young-min felt very disappointed. Then he took the pen out of his pocket and told Yang-han about the substance related to her uncle. It turned out that Jin-man had discovered that something was off with Young-min. So, he had hung Young-min up high. However, Young-min's phone contained a recording of the incident involving Young's kidnapping. In the end, he sacrificed his life, hoping that the Babylon organization would release Young. However, Young-min confessed that the recording was generated using AI. He couldn't believe that Jin-man could be so foolish. Yang sao kai beat doak su that ko de het lon len trong su sui sup. While Young-min rambled on, feeling quite pleased with himself, Yang suddenly burst into laughter, realizing that the people at Babylon would never spare Young-min. As soon as he stepped out of this house, he would surely be killed, and the green code would be protected. Jin-man was dead, and now the only one left with the green code was her. Although Yang didn't know what her uncle had done, considering the scale of things, it was that many people tried to protect her more. Therefore, she hoped that Young-min could reconsider that no one was coming from Babylon. If he died, they wouldn't care, and he was just a pawn for them. Young-min was a bit confused by Yang's words, but he still had no intention of letting her go. The two had a fierce argument, with Yang mocking Young-min as a coward, and Young-min, in anger, hit Yang. After a while of exchanging words, Yang kicked Young-min away with both feet. Then, using all his strength to push hard, Young-min quickly escaped from under Yang's desk. At that moment, her uncle's words echoed in her ears. She had to make use of everything in times of crisis, to use anything to survive. Yang immediately grabbed a bundle of rope and a barrel of a substance that resembled glue. Before long, Young-min fell into the trap that Yang had set. Meanwhile, more members of the Babylon mercenary group arrived, while Min-hye treated the wounds on the arm of the man hammering the wall. He wouldn't stop until he dug a large hole. It turned out that there were weapons inside. The mercenaries were also busy, as the technician had brought a new control device. After testing its durability, it jumped off the bridge and sped towards the house. On the other hand, the man revealed that each room in the house was used for defense. If used correctly, no one could enter. He operated the computer and lowered the bulletproof shutter. However, this action was noticed by the sniper Sungjo. He immediately alerted his teammates to quickly infiltrate the house. The electronic device charged into Min-hye's house, and she shot it twice. However, because it reacted so quickly, she couldn't destroy it. Along with the gunfire from the mercenaries outside, Min-hye was forced to barricade the living room. When the mercenaries arrived at the house, the electronic device was using its body to block the door, leaving just enough space to crawl inside. Additionally, it had a thermal sensing function that could see through the metal door and detect silhouettes. Min-hye told the man that from now on, he had to fend for himself. In the basement, Jin-man left a letter for his niece, giving Jian a chance to choose. Firstly, if Jian wanted to escape from this situation, she could use the back door of the site that led to an exit. Secondly, she could join those who were fighting for her and defend this place. At this moment, the electronic device was fixed in place, slowly drilling a small hole and injecting poison into it. Fortunately, Min-hye and the man had already prepared the equipment. Both of them put on masks and prepared to fight the enemy as a small hole was quickly drilled into the door. As soon as the electronic device injected the poison inside, the man inside operated the door, causing the device to fall. Before the mercenaries could react, a flash bomb was thrown out. Min-hye, like a red phantom, spun around and decapitated the mercenary, swiftly eliminating the enemy. Then she ran over and grabbed the enemy's gun. With her skillful maneuvers, the mercenaries were quickly poisoned on the spot. Min-hye immediately changed positions, and the mercenaries quickly reacted, shooting at the sofa. Although Min-hye was injured, she still risked everything to approach them. She jumped up and delivered a kick that took down the mercenary. Then she used her gun to shoot at all the remaining mercenaries. At that moment, Jian and the man shouted for Min-hye to come over, and their screams attracted the attention of the adversaries. The man quickly pulled the trigger. Suddenly, the gun ran out of bullets, and Min-hye took this opportunity to leap through the hallway of the house. The leader of the mercenaries stood up. At the same time, Jian took 2 grenades from her bag and immediately threw them outside. Quickly, a loud explosion echoed from inside. However, the leader of the mercenaries wasn't finished. He grabbed Jian by the hair and threw her into the room. At that moment, the superior ordered not to kill Jian, but this person was not convinced. At that moment, someone suddenly appeared from behind and killed him. Jian looked closely and realized that this was her uncle's good friend. However, this person informed her that there was no time left because Balo was coming. That was the person who had killed Jian's parents. It was known that 14 years ago, while the mercenaries were escorting a South Korean businessman, Jin-man's team was attacked by enemy forces. Inside the vehicle were Jin-man, Park Jin, and another person. If they couldn't wait for support, they would surely lose their lives. On the other hand, the sniper was being threatened by a crazed man with a knife pointed at his face. Fortunately, someone arrived in time to rescue him. Just as the two were happily laughing together, they were suddenly targeted by 4 other rebels. Suddenly, gunfire rang out. The one carrying out the rescue was none other than Balo. He saw a rebel still breathing and immediately grabbed a long knife, striking his opponent fiercely. After that, the three of them carried out the mission. Under the incredible marksmanship of the sniper, the enemy forces blocking the road were systematically picked off. However, just as the team was preparing to depart, Chundu reported that Balo's group and the sniper had not yet arrived. Based on the silence from the radio, it had been an hour since then. Jin-man sensed that something was wrong and immediately went to look for them. In fact, the sniper was also unable to contact Balo. Therefore, the rookie decided to go look for Balo on his own. On the way, he saw many bodies of civilians and heard faint cries for help. It turned out that Balo had taken 2 civilians hostage and, in particular, picked up a pistol with which he shot those 2 civilians. In fact, he was fond of killing, and this scene was accidentally witnessed by the rookie. At that moment, the sniper also arrived. The rookie immediately pointed out that Balo had killed the 2 civilians. However, things were not that simple at all. Balo turned to look at the sniper, who immediately shot the rookie. At this moment, Paeksayan and Jin-man had reached the lower floor of the building. Both heard the gunfire and began searching separately. When he reached the second floor, Jin-man heard someone talking. Following the source of the sound, he stepped into the room where the incident was taking place. Jin-man saw the bodies on the ground and Balo not far away. He seemed to know what happened. He immediately lowered his gun and checked the bullet wound on the rookie's forehead. At that moment, a boy with a gun appeared at the doorway. However, Balo shot the boy right in front of Jin-man. He explained that he did it because he couldn't leave any witnesses behind. Before long, the trial began for the murder of the civilians. It turned out that before the trial, Jin-man revealed to Yang Han that the bullet embedded in the head of the victim was a .45 caliber. However, among the guns collected from the rebels, none had that caliber. Yang Han requested that Jin-man only recount what he had witnessed. Ultimately, Jin-man stated that he had not seen Balo kill the civilians. Due to insufficient evidence, the judge acquitted the mercenaries in court. However, Jin-man had one condition: from that point on, Balo should not be allowed in his task force anymore. However, Yang Han did not keep his promise and arranged for the two to carry out missions together. That moment, the mercenaries had split into 2 factions. Before long, Jin-man was assigned to carry out a mission with Balo once again. This time, Jin-man directly ordered him not to kill any innocent people, and the mission went very smoothly. Of course, innocent people were still killed by Balo, which led others to follow him. This was because he could gather a lot of loot, such as cash. Trangus. While the sniper was on a mission, he discovered 4 women who were being held captive. He immediately called Balo over, while the woman gathered her courage to plead for help from the mercenaries. Balo reassured her not to worry and to stay still, then he threw a grenade inside. Jin-man heard the sound of the grenade and quickly arrived at the scene. He immediately guessed that it was Balo who had done this. Balo stated that the general had said there were no civilians here. After saying that, he stepped towards Jin-man's gun, deliberately provoking him. At that moment, the sniper stepped forward to intervene, saying that they were family. Ultimately, Jin-man lowered his weapon, stating that he would report the matter to the company. Blow everything up here and then return to the base. However, while he was setting the timer bomb, he suddenly heard a strange sound coming from the cabinet. So, he slowly approached, and suddenly a woman in lingerie jumped out, and that woman was Min-hye. Jin-man felt sorry for her, so he gave her his jacket to wear, then he gestured for silence. If Balo found out, she would be killed. He ordered the team to return to the base, reminding them to keep an eye on Balo. After the entire team had completely left, the timer bomb had only 8 minutes left. Jin-man pulled Min-hye to run outside, but just as they reached the stairs, they encountered Balo standing in their way. Jin-man immediately pulled out his gun and then led Min-hye to run out of there. However, before they could get down the stairs, they were blocked by Balo. Balo immediately fired his gun, but he had no intention of killing Jin-man. Taking advantage of the moment, Jin-man and Min-hye ran up to the rooftop. Then, Jin-man pulled out his dagger. Balo also discarded his pistol upon seeing this. Then he confessed the reason he became a mercenary. He simply enjoyed killing as long as he followed a few basic rules. He could make as much money as he wanted by killing. So, don't emphasize the civilians to him, it makes him want to kill everyone, whether ally or enemy. At this moment, only 4 minutes left on the timer bomb, and a fight broke out between them. Balo kicked Jin-man's leg, mocking him for being at such a level, then tossed him a dagger. Another attack ensued. Just as Balo was about to kill Jin-man with a strike, someone suddenly shot him in the eye. It turned out that the shooter was Min-hye. Balo was blinded in one eye but not dead. Jin-man grabbed the dagger and plunged it forcefully into his chest. However, Balo threatened Jin-man. If Jin-man didn't kill him now, he would kill Jin-man's entire family. Friends and anyone connected to him would ultimately be killed. Jin-man would certainly not allow Balo to do these things. He used all his strength to stab the dagger forcefully into Balo. Then he picked up the pistol from the ground. Coincidentally it was empty, the timer bomb had only 1 minute left. Min-hye urged Jin-man to run outside, and just at that moment, the bomb exploded. Ultimately, only the two of them managed to escape. During the investigation, Jin-man lied that Balo was killed while trying to save him. After that, he resigned, and Han felt that something was wrong. He ordered his subordinates to secretly monitor Jin-man. At the same time, no one in the team suspected Jin-man. But as Jin-man was about to return home, he noticed someone was following him. Therefore, he traveled to many places. Only then can he feel at ease returning home. That was also the day he met his niece Jian. While Sung-do was practicing sniper shooting, suddenly someone appeared behind him, and this person was Balo. It turned out that after Min-hye was rescued by hiding in Honda's weapons warehouse. During this time, Jin-man tried various methods but still couldn't find Balo's assassin. Hongda thought that Balo might have died. Hongda was a deaf-mute person, his younger brother was a computer genius. On this side, Balo, the intern brother of the hired group, exposed Jin-man's lies. At the same time, planned to kill the entire Jin-man family. One of them had a pointed nose because he did not kill his niece's heart with his hand. So he would like to withdraw from this plan. However, I have been hindered. Sung took the lives of Chun's family as a threat to force him to participate. Afterwards, the hired soldiers were divided into two groups. Balo personally assassinated Jin-man's mother to death. When he arrived at the funeral, he deceived Jin-man's older brother and sister-in-law into going to upper class. Not only did he brutally stab his sister-in-law to death, but he also blamed his deceased older brother. Then Hongda disguised the fact that the two of them stopped the game themselves. At that time, Jin-man received a call from Chun, who said on the other end of the line that Balo was not dead. He was on his way to the monastery. After hearing this, Jin-man immediately sent a message to Honda asking him to protect Jinan's granddaughter. Then he went straight to the temple. When Honda arrived at Jin-man's apartment, he saw the assassin open the door. As soon as the assassin stepped inside, Honda quickly pulled the assassin out and fights him. Very quickly he defeated the assassin with just one punch. Honda immediately revealed his identity to Jin-van. Then he hid the little girl in the bedroom. At this time the second assassin with a gun steps into the apartment. Honda unfortunately got shot in the stomach. He immediately ran away while the assassin still hadn't stood up. However, the intense gunfire attracted Sung-yo. He pulled the axe from his hand and intended to strike Honda. Fortunately, Hongda managed to dodge just in time. Hongda's punch drove Sung-yo completely crazy. On tunam lay kante dang vei kwa Honda, saudu kem veo chan on I roi nem on I suang mat san. He grabbed the waving arm of Honda, then chopped his leg and threw him down to the floor. At the same time, Jin-man just entered the tunnel when he saw a woman's car broken down in front. Jin-man still didn't know what to do. Suddenly, a truck unexpectedly crashed into him from behind. Afterwards, the cargo truck door opened and some hired soldiers rushed out. They didn't say anything and began shooting at Jin-man's car. The woman who just called for help, not knowing where she got the gun, fired twice at the car window. After firing multiple consecutive shots in the car, there was still no movement at all. When the hired soldiers suddenly stopped shooting, the car's hood slowly opened. Jin-man inside the shotguns towards them. In a moment he had self-destroyed the mercenaries. Sung-yo, the commander in charge, was escaping to one side. He gathered all his courage to fight back but realized that Jin-man had disappeared. Just as he turned around, he saw Jin-man. Jin-man immediately snatched the gun from Sung-yo's hand. Jin-man asked Sung-yo if Balo was really still alive. Sung-yo said that he had no other choice. He hadn't finished speaking when a woman rushed out and shot Sung-yo dead. On the other hand, through the surveillance camera, Min-hye discovered that someone had sneaked into the weapons storage. Therefore, she hid in the darkness and seized the opportunity to kill two mercenaries. She knew that this place was no longer safe, so she decided to grab some equipment and prepare to escape. Before leaving, Min-hye activated the self-destruct device, causing flames to spread through the wiring and incinerate the weapons storage. At that moment, Park Sin just arrived at the front door and noticed that the lock had been opened. It turned out that the person who broke in Park Sin's house was Jin-man. He was seriously injured. When he woke up, Park Sin made it clear that, "I didn't want to get involved in the internal struggle, so I hope Jin-man can leave immediately." Before leaving, Jin-man requested weapons. Park Sin didn't understand why Jin-man was so determined to kill Balo. It turned out that Jin-man blames himself a lot. He thought that if he testified in court that day, perhaps the 4 innocent women who were imprisoned would not have to die. So he wanted to set everything back on the right track. After hearing this, Park Sin said nothing and threw a damaged gun towards Jin-man, and said that the gun only had 13 bullets. On the other hand, Yang Han discovered that Balo was still alive, which meant that Jin-man had lied. So, the company decided to handle the issue. When John hid in the morgue next to his mother's body, Jin-man outside had dealt with 2 of the mercenaries. Then he rushed into the morgue and killed the curly-haired assassin. When Jin-man took Jian away from there, he happened to see Balo. Balo pulled out a rifle. Suddenly, while moving forward, a group of people came to express their sincere gratitude. Just like that, Jin-man disappeared. In no time, Jin-man appeared at Yang-han's house. He placed a rifle on the table to show that it still has 5 bullets. He has killed 4 people outside and still has 1 bullet left. Before he left, he had been here for an hour, but he didn't do that. Jin-man believed that the murders of his mother, his brother, his sister-in-law, and his friend's teammates were all connected. That punishment was more than enough for what he had done. If Yang-han stopped here, he would take everything that had happened to his grave. Yang-han immediately called Balo. So far, the disagreements between the two had been temporarily set aside, but Jin-man knew that Balo would not back down. So, he and Ba-sin came up with a plan for the two of them to build a sturdy house together. The entire security system was handed over to Browser. Meanwhile, Sung-jo trained Min-hye day and night, eventually establishing a tightly regulated online store system. However, 10 years had passed in what seemed like peaceful days. After the mercenary group received their orders, Jin-man immediately attacked to surround the house. Back in time, Ba-sin helped Min-hye, who was injured, by removing the bullet from her body. On the other hand, Brother sensed the smell of explosives underground. Ba-sin thought they should go underground immediately. However, Browser disagreed with this decision. At this point, Young-min had escaped, but he couldn't use the elevator without the password. So, he focused his attention on the server of the online store. Browser explained that Jin-man had set a trap underground, which contained explosives. The shopping store was designed so that the manager could operate it at any time. And whenever Jin-man was absent, he would be there, which was why he told Jian not to leave it. Jian asked Browser what would happen if the manager left, to which the answer was to restart the protocol. However, it would take 24 hours to restart it. At that moment, Jojio noticed that someone had logged into the online store manager's account. A moment later, the defense shipment had been unlocked. At that moment, the electronic device lost its sensor and suddenly stood up. Then came a piercing wave of sound. The bulletproof glass shattered quickly, and Browser, who was in poor physical condition, immediately collapsed on the spot. Even Park Sin's eyes turned red as Jian struggled to pull Browser into the room. Min-hye picked up the gun from the ground just as she was about to smash the electronic device. Suddenly, a car crashed in and crushed the electronic device. 2 people emerged from the car, a pair of twin mercenaries. At the same time, Sung-jo was stuck in the car door. Jian rushed into and grabbed the knife. Park Sin, who disliked the twins, wanted to take them on in a one-on-one fight. The twins saw this and put their guns away, drawing their knives to fight each other. On the other hand, Sung-jo found the room where Jian was hiding. He looked down into the underbrush when suddenly a pair of legs jumped up. Jian wanted to kill him, but unfortunately her physical strength was not strong enough. As soon as Sung-ju prepared to kill Jian, Browser used something to hit him on the head. He then climbed on top of him and shouted for Jian to run, and Jian quickly dashed into the living room. At that moment, Park Sin was still fighting with the twin mercenaries. Sung-jo in the room separated from Browser. He pointed a gun at Browser's chest and pulled the trigger. Browser va bop ko. Min-hye was kicked away by the opponent to buy time for Jian to escape. Park Sin shouted at Jian to get out of there quickly. Jian, frightened, quickly ran outside, then turned back and rushed into the warehouse. However, Sung-jo caught up with her, and at that moment, Jin's words echoed in Jian's mind. Jian remained calm and looked at the body of the mercenary on the ground before picking up the handgun. When Sung-jo caught up, he couldn't find Jian anywhere. Instead, he focused on the gemstone ring on the mercenary's hand. His greedy nature slowed down the chase by a few beats. At this moment, Jian suddenly pointed the gun towards him from behind. Jian did not shoot right away. The sentence wanted to know who killed her parents. Suddenly there was a loud noise from behind. Sung-jo escaped from the person who caused the noise, Young-min. He stormed into the warehouse, shouting loudly to vent his anger. Suddenly, he caught sight of the gun and picked it up. While cursing the mercenary and Jian, it wasn't long before the gun was out of bullets. Sung-jo suddenly appeared behind him and delivered a fatal blow that ended Young-min's life. Jian went down to the basement. After Sung-jo killed Young-min, he also went down to the basement. No matter what, Jian couldn't break the lock on the armory. She had no choice but to find a place to hide first. While Sung-jo was putting on infrared glasses, Jian accidentally triggered a bomb. Hearing the sound, Sung-jo immediately shot towards Jian. Unfortunately, Jian's gun was out of bullets. To make matters worse, there was another gun right in front of her. But Sung-jo didn't know this. He suddenly noticed a trail of blood on the ground. He followed the trail, but found nothing. In fact, Jian had slipped into a secret room, watching Sung-jo through the surveillance camera. On the other hand, Roger had woken up. It turned out he was wearing a bulletproof vest and wasn't dead. Just as Sung-jo was saying something to him and Jin-man, Jian suddenly drove the car straight at him. Although Sung-jo quickly dodged the vehicle, he accidentally triggered the bomb in the process. Not stopping there, the area he flew into was filled with fuel that had been spilled earlier. It was that moment he realized he had been tricked. Jin aimed her gun at him, trying to pull the trigger while on the ground. In no time, sparks from the bullet's impact ignited the fuel. Flames rushed toward Sungjo's arms and legs, engulfing him in fire. As the blaze grew stronger, the sprinkler system above suddenly turned on. He miraculously survived, but in the end Jin shot him in the head. This battle has finally come to an end. Sungjo tries to wake up the unconscious Min-hye. Roger immediately went down to the basement. After confirming that Jin was safe, he began to repair the online store's server. However, he was taken aback to find another group of assassins gathering at the house. The mercenaries had issued a bounty. Anyone who killed 4 people would receive $4 million. Jin thought for a moment and ordered Roger to open the armory. Instead of a gun, she quickly grabbed an axe just as the assassins broke into the warehouse. Roger stepped out with a megaphone just as the mercenaries were caught off guard. Jin unexpectedly announced that she was the new owner of the online store. First, she wanted to give a special gift to the customers who came. Hearing this, Roger quickly emptied his backpack, showing the barrel of a shotgun. Jin admitted she had just killed the gunman. She then shared the locations of each assassin and suggested everyone leave, assuring them that nothing would happen. For the bounty offered by Babylon, she planned to divide it equally and transfer the money to each person tax-free, just like they did with Jin-man. They could collaborate with her, and their code would remain intact. Occasionally, they would also offer discount vouchers and better prices than Jin-man. However, if they refused to back down and continued to cling to this place, they would all end up dead. After careful consideration, all the Red Code assassins agreed to Jin's proposal. They evacuated the house just as Baeksayan entered the room and saw Min-hye gradually stabilizing her breathing. After driving off the assassins, Jin decided to step outside and assess the situation, but she couldn't see Baeksayan or Min-hye anywhere. Just as she felt overwhelmed and began to cry, she suddenly heard the roar of a car in the distance. Jin thought it was the assassins and quickly ran toward the car. However, the person who got out of the car was the one in charge of her uncle's cremation. This individual claimed to be the gold code responsible for the consequences. And so, the process of moving the bodies continued until morning. Suddenly, someone reported that a car was approaching, and Jin and the gold code members prepared for a fight. However, the person who got out of the car turned out to be her Jin-man. Alright, the movie ends here. Please take 3 seconds to subscribe to our channel to support us. Kamon kak ban da don zem ken kwa chung min.